All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Club Fit Simplified podcast, where we dissect club fitting for every level of player and make it easy. I'm joined here by Darren McKinnon. Darren, welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Hello. Welcome to you too.
Yeah. So Darren and I will be creating a series of podcasts that cover club fitting from soup to nuts, from drivers to putters. Um, who needs it? We could talk about different products, talk about different types of shafts, things like that. We're going to get a little bit geeky, I would say, on this, just because you can only talk about club fitting for so much. But we want to deliver a very high level of information so that people can really understand what they're doing when they go in for club fitting. So, Darren, please introduce yourself and tell the audience what you do.
So I'm Darren McKinnon. I am the assistant PGA professional and the director of club fitting at Joe Leigh's Discount Golf Shop and Pine Oaks Golf Course. Lots of word salad there to basically say I love to be a geek about clubs, and I teach as well. So swings and clubs are my forte.
Great. So a lot of golfers are beginners and they get into it. And first words out of their mouth are, I got to take a lesson. You know what I mean? Or whatever. My thought, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, you're the expert, but my thought is you let them be as athletic as they can be with golf. Get them out there on like the short courses. Have them swing their swing. Have them getting comfortable hitting the ball. Have them get in a situation where they can kind of repeat what they're doing. And then when they get comfortable with some kind of athletic swing, then go to a guy like you for a lesson. That's the first, like, all right, here's the question. Do you do a lesson, obviously, before you do a club fit?
Not no, it's not one or the other. We've had
Oh,
both sides of that equation. If you've never held a golf club before, you don't know which end is up, then you certainly want to get a lesson. But to your point about athleticism, there's some core tenets that you'd want to put in front of somebody, which, a lot of current golfers, like if they bring in a significant other or just their buddies or whatever, they might be able to get them started in terms of like, hey, here's a couple of options of holding the golf club. But that athletic posture you're talking about, things like that, can be molded earlier. We always say the old habits are hard to break. So, like young kids, for example, that you can start them off with lessons, and the club fitting comes second because they're going to grow. You know that he might need a set of clubs. He comes in today for a holiday gift, but by April he's 4 inches taller because he had a
yeah,
growth spurt. But for the
exactly.
adults, when they come through, I wouldn't say there's a good or a bad, because in a new golf situation, a new golfer situation, if you're 6'7" or something like that, you got to make sure you have the right size. And it's a little different. I call it sizing at that point as opposed to fitting. I guess I should define that a little. Fitting would entail a lot more details. It would be launches and spins and curves and things like that. Whereas sizing is just like, hey, I'm 6'7". I probably need a taller golf club. And to your point about like athleticism, if you grab your buddy's clubs and he's 6'5", they might be hockey sticks in your hands. You're going to develop a bad posture, or you'd have to choke up a little bit, which isn't the end of the world. You can still swing the golf club athletically. But if we build the club at least close to the right size to start, you might develop better habits early on. So we
Okay.
don't ever push one or the other. We try to kind of divide and conquer, because we have plenty of people that will come in who are either new golfers or just novice golfers, and they say, "No, I'm never taking a lesson. This is a fun thing to do with my buddies. So build a club for me," and they're going to play athletically, just like you said. Then there's other people who potentially, like with it, I mentioned like teenagers and things like that, where they're getting involved in a grassroots area and need to have a little bit of instruction to get their fitting done right. And that's only because of the, you mentioned growth spurts and athletic, it's, the athletic side of things. The growth spurt ones are always, they go from the, giraffe on roller skates to athletic, they fill out a little bit. That would affect their club fitting more than it would affect their swing.
Makes sense. Um, so take a step back. Buying golf clubs is not what it used to be. Like people would go in and they'd look at the latest set of TaylorMades or Titleist irons or whatever, and there would be a full set, and they would look at the price and they'd say, okay, this is what I want to do. But people aren't doing that now, are they?
Not as much. There's still some of that, especially this time of year, but even just in general, some people just have a generic feel like, hey, I'm 5'10", I'm an average height guy, I swing pretty easy, I just want regular shafts. And it's more about like just not wanting to take that extra step. And I think it's a little bit of misinformation. This is where I give credit to all those brands you mentioned, whether it's Callaway or Ping or anyone like that, that it used to be you had regular or stiff, tall or short. You know, it was very simplified as far as the sizing went, for lack of a better term. But now with all of those companies, they'll offer, I guess I'll call it flavors. They will pick on like the shaft, for example, that transmission of the club. We talk about getting a guy a nice club head, whether it's, brand not specific, but the design of the club head is the first thing. I need to know if you're a tour player and you want a set of tour blades or a nice game improvement club. And then we look at those shafts I mentioned, and you can have a lightweight shaft, a heavier shaft, a middleweight shaft. There's high launch, there's low launch. We know what they are, but a guy walking in the street just says, "Oh, I want to stock, I'll take them out of the box." There could be something better for him, is probably the end game. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions is when you have those fittings taking place, is that fitting has to cost not just the cost of the fitting itself, but like the clubs are going to be way more expensive. And that isn't the case at all. So if you came in and said, "Hey, I want a set of Callaway Elite irons," Callaway offers about 6 or 7 different shafts for no extra charge, and so does Ping, and so does Titleist. So I'm just using that because it's alphabetical, I guess. But the point is, if the sign on the wall says 9.99 for a set of irons, it's 9.99 with any of those shafts in there. So if we could fine tune it for you to help that guy that hits it a little lower, he would never know until we put one of those other shafts in that makes it go higher, and then obviously not cost them an arm and a leg to do that. So those, I think, sometimes that price tag you mentioned, like, hey, it's within my budget, puts people into that mode of I'm an average guy and I'm not good enough to get fitted. Kind of your point from the opening is, when do I get fitted? And that's a piece that segues in with these shafts and stuff like that. We look for people that just can repeat their swing. Like I said, whether it's a great swing or a bad swing, if you slice or you hook, those are things we can help you with in the club fitting to some degree, but you don't have to be a tour player. You don't have to be a low handicap player. We find some of the biggest gains are those people in like that 15 to 25 handicap range. They might be shooting around 100 or whatever because they've been playing clubs that, their best friend who's a great player just handed over to them. Like I said, those hand-me-downs that are too stiff or too heavy or too
Yeah.
small of a sweet spot. So in those situations, there's a massive gain to be had. If you're a scratch golfer, you're already hitting with such precision that a lot of those fittings are different. The player tells us, "I want to hit it lower," or "I want to hit it with more curve." Great. That's what they're looking for. And we can build for that player as well.
So when you say build a club from the ground up, I guess, the person tells you what they're looking for. They want to hit it higher. They want to hit it further. They want to have more spin. They want to, and you kind of, based on, well, actually talk about the equipment you use.
My own equipment, you mean, or just in terms of the
No,
fittings?
the
I mean,
equipment in terms of measuring all those things.
yeah,
Uh,
so in our building, like we prefer to use the Foresight, the GC Quad. It's a just one of many, and people hear about TrackMan and Flight Scope, but we use the GC Quad because we're comfortable with it and it gives us great data. The idea of getting all that information of speed and spin and how far the ball carries versus how much it rolls, how much is it curving, all the angles are there for us. It gives us. I like to use the word breadcrumbs. It tells us where to go next. So when that customer comes in and says, "I really need to hit the ball higher," certainly with institutional knowledge of the different brands, we could pick out certain club heads that help with that and then enhance it even more with the right shaft. For example, like a graphite shaft. A lot of people are still stuck in the 70s and think graphite was for grandpa, that
yeah.
they now you get graphite shafts that could technically be heavier or as heavy and just as stiff as a steel shaft, and if you need it because you got a bum elbow or something, it's a great tool to have. But most people would say, "Oh, I don't need that graphite," because, again, misinformation. But back to that logic of, how to get that player into their fitting, so to speak. Those requests are just that. And if your swing is relatively repeatable, we feel like we can change that for you. We can add that launch angle back in, get the ball to carry higher, whatever we're looking for. Distance is sexy, I always say. So everyone wants to hit it farther. And in some cases, the perception of like a low line drive kind of driver. People love that. "Oh, look how that's going to roll forever." Well, not at Pine Oaks in the middle of April when it's wet. It's going to
Right.
land at 200 yards and plug into the ground.
Yeah.
So put that same guy on the golf course in August, he might get some more roll. But how about if we can get him to carry it 220 yards by hitting it higher? And they fight back. Like, "Oh, no, no, I don't need it higher. I want it to roll." Well, again, if it goes 220 and rolls 20 yards or goes 200 and rolls 40 yards, it's still 240. but the 220 is the better flight line because you could play that in the rain, so to speak. And those are just nuances, obviously, but that's the questions we like to hear from you. We can't fix everything in a fitting. Like if you slice, it could be the club, but there's also some user error in there. And yeah, in some cases, admittedly, I've had people say, you know what, we can get only so far with this. If you're interested, we have a staff of teachers, or they might be coming to me and saying, hey, I'm taking lessons. Can I get fitted? Sure. Especially with like the adjustable hosels on the drivers. We can set it up to help your slice now as I guess I'll call it a Band-Aid. But if the kid's full grown, he's 6 feet tall and he swings hard, I'm going to be very generic sounding, but get him a stiffer shaft and a correct loft for that day, and then something changes, we can adjust the hosel for him, or his pro can do that back at his lesson. So there's a lot of leeway nowadays, as opposed to the old days where you just, as you commented earlier, and saying, I need a regular shaft or a stiff shaft, and I hit it high, so give me a low lofted club. Like they were very rudimentary, and it still applies, but now we have so much more data to back up why it isn't what you think it is.
So a lot of guys, especially when they get older, they don't go to a four or even a three iron. Um, do you recommend you say to them, look, I've even heard like it's probably even more, but like 11 or nine woods.
Oh, sure.
Um, so do you recommend to players, that is struggling with a five iron? Do you say, well, why don't you take a look at a seven wood, something
Yeah,
like that?
and that's exactly it. So we look at it as like a toolbox. We'll call it that way. So if I need a Phillips head screwdriver, I need a Phillips head screwdriver. The flathead won't work. But if I'm looking at it and saying, "Hey, I need a club that goes 120 yards," an advanced player, that might be their sand wedge. For a senior player, that might be their five wood. Depending on how slow their swing speed is. So if we can create the right flight pattern, so like you mentioned, 9 wood, 7 wood, 11 wood, or maybe multiple hybrids, those longer clubs, the 3 irons that are gone basically now, but 4 irons and 5 irons, they're heavier, they're longer, they have less loft, they become a little bit more difficult to hit. And even just advanced players, like on tour, you're seeing more 9 wood show up because of the characteristics that the launch monitors show us. A little less spin on a fairway wood, real easy to get airborne. So you play a place like Augusta National with not a lot of rough, you get nice high lofted shots into these greens that land soft and kind of stay there, as opposed to things we've seen over the years where a guy fires one and it spins back off the green because he's hitting it with too much spin. So a tour player can certainly handle that, but an average player should be looking into that as well and saying, what am I best at? Can we, and we show it that. That's where the launch monitors are great. It'll show this and kind of bluntly saying, listen, you shouldn't play a 5 iron. You don't hit it high enough, or you're getting too much side spin on it. We'll hand them a hybrid or a 9 wood or whatever they need right against it, side by side. Say this one went 100 yards with a slice because it's sliced. This one went 125, nice and high right down the middle. And they kind of sell themselves. We certainly have our own personal tastes. Ego gets in the way. Like, oh, I used to hear that a lot. Like hybrids were for, high
Yeah.
handicap players. And then you look in the bag of every tour pro. I remember like 2002, 2003, it was like 1,000% increase on tour. They went from none to every guy had a couple of them, it was some silly number like that. But the point is, those guys are playing for millions of dollars. They want the best tools to help them win. And if they're doing it, why shouldn't every amateur but at least take a look at it? And it's not a set number. It's not like, oh, you're a 20 handicap. You should be in this club because your angles matter, your strengths matter, and then just the type of swing you have. Some people have, I'm going to air quote the word like an iron swing that might be a little steeper and take a divot. Doesn't always pair up well with a fairway wood. But another guy comes in, he kind of sweeps everything and doesn't really take a divot. That probably precludes an iron for him. He might be better off with a hybrid or a fairway wood. So in our world, we want you to hit them. We want you to get involved and take swings and see those flights right in our simulator and prove it. Say, nope, that one's better. And they can usually tell. And if it's a tiebreaker, obviously the customer's going to pick what they like best.
Makes sense. So to that point though, when they're building a set of clubs, is it pricing by club or even like they might have uh they might have Titleist irons, but then buy a tailor-made seven wood. Do
Sure.
you
Yep.
mix and match and all that?
We will. Yeah. We're not we try to be agnostic, let's put it that way. And we
Yeah.
look at it kind of my comment about the toolbox. So if the best driver is brand X and the best irons are brand Y, I mean, you could go right through and, if you look at just sheer popularity, hey, the best selling driver was a, Callaway Elite, but the best selling wedge was a Cleveland. If it works, it's not that it's the best selling, it has to work for you. And we give you that option. Now, to that same extent, there are plenty of people that love the graphics. They want all the green graphics or all the blue graphics. So we start them off and say, great, here's again, whatever brand, and they might get everything from head to toe in that same brand. But to kind of piggyback on what you said, the set makeup, if you will, the toolbox can be totally different. And we mentioned like fairway wood. So one guy gets a driver, a 5 wood and a 9 wood, and then has a 6, 7, 8, 9 pitching wedge and sand wedge. Another guy comes in, he's got a driver, and then a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5 hybrid, and 6 iron through sand wedge. So we can a la carte those kind of builds any way we want. And the manufacturers are all on board with it. They want to put the best clubs in the bag and the best tools for you to succeed because you'll give them the props. When we have a bad round of golf, we either blame the golf course or the golf clubs. So if that's the case, right, if you say, hey, this guy's got a great set, he's not going to blame the clubs. He can blame the rain or something else, but that's what they're hoping for. And, selfishly, we want to sell a lot of golf clubs. But the idea is if you can't get a 5 iron airborne, it's not in my best interest to sell you a 5 iron. Just get rid of it. Use it towards something else. Maybe he gets an extra wedge or buys a new bag. There's reasons not to force feed those kind of, I would call it a boxed version, like when you walk in the store. Yeah, we display sets of irons on our wall, 4 iron through pitching wedge. And the price is up there. Say, great. Well, if you look at the fine print, so to speak, the sign says on it, 7 clubs. We don't care what 7 clubs. And if it was a, you know, 8-piece set, for example, for $1,000, well, then it's $150 per club. So if you take 2 clubs out, you save $300. If you add a couple more clubs, you just add that price tag back in. And we try to show you that, like I said, hit hybrids, hit fairway woods, really be involved in that gapping, we call it, to make sure you're getting the correct mix in your toolbox.
Yeah, that's good stuff. The other thing too that I don't know if it happens or not, but it just popped into my brain is you get fitted for a club or you get fitted for a set, and a year or two go by, and you think your handicap comes down a bit like that. Then you come back to you with that existing set, and you hit it again and see that probably. I mean, I don't know if you keep numbers or not, but numbers could change, and obviously, you could be, your 5 iron that you were hitting pretty well now all of a sudden needs to be a 7 wood. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you take your existing set and do you start? Oh, let me ask you that. Do you start off if a person has an existing set? Do you start off with their set or
Always.
no?
Yeah, if we can. We tell them when they make their appointments, say, bring your clubs with you. So some people just come in to get a driver, some people come in to get the whole set. But the other part of that too is the surroundings. So it happens all the time. Some simulators are, if they haven't been calibrated or whatnot. But if you come in and we know that today, and that's always phrase it, that, your 7 iron's going 150 yards with a little slice on my monitor. I'm trying to beat that, whatever that is. So if we go through the process with you and the new 7 irons, plural, anything we try with great shaft and everything else goes 152 yards or something like that, well, you don't need to buy a new one, like you just said. But if it's totally different, if that 5 iron doesn't get airborne and we throw a hybrid or a 7 wood in your hands for whatever club we need to do, it's head to head. It's like saying, hey, I'm going to go play in Denver. It's going to go farther, right? You need to have that baseline. So we like to use the person's club as their baseline.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the other thing too is, which I didn't even know, I should have known, but I didn't know existed, was you fit for putters as well.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So how does that work?
So same idea. There are different sets of numbers that we use in the putter world, but there's things, little different terminology, but some is the same. And we're looking for like the right size. You got to get the right length so they can practice a lot. Kind of silly way of phrasing it, but I'll ask guys. We get your positioning. Tried and true is to get their eyes over the ball or a little inside the ball. So if their length is wrong, we got to start there. We talk about head design. So you have blade putters or mallet putters, and that has to do with feel and weight and alignment and aiming the ball, things like that. You hear a lot today about like zero torque, for example, is in a bunch of different brands. It was around a long time ago, but people didn't know what to call it, or it didn't jump out to the forefront as it does today. But we have software that will analyze the arc of your stroke and the speed of the ball. And just like in a driver, for example, there is speed and spin and skidding, they call it, and then the software will analyze that. So we can basically do the same thing, bring in your putter and say, look, your putter's rotating a lot, and because of that it's skidding a lot, and because it's skidding a lot it's going offline more. So in whatever the cure is, we might change putters, we might change the insert, we could change the weights, the lengths. So it's its own little kind of niche fitting that we're starting to grow more and more into, with the logic that it's the club you use the most, so why wouldn't we fit it? But almost like the same way we were talking about beginners earlier, we'll say, well, I don't need to get fitted because I don't know that it would help. A lot of people don't know they can get fitted for putters, and it's becoming more and more relevant in the game because they're seeing those launch monitors and being able to analyze data. And admittedly, we just didn't know what we didn't know. Now that we know, it's good. We love to have it in there, and we love to fit putters for people, but admittedly have thousands of driver and iron fittings and maybe a couple hundred putter fittings right now. So it's getting there.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, if you look at a scorecard, or if you keep track of things like putts, I would assume that the most strokes you take are with a putter. So I mean, that would be
Correct.
where you want to go. Are
Yeah.
you running out of time or?
No, I was just reaching because I'm trying to find the light. There we go.
Oh, there you go.
Looked like I was disappearing.
There it is. So
Office is getting
anyway,
dark.
but
The
no,
other thing too to that point was wedges. We do
oh
wedge
yes,
fittings. Same idea, you could just get fitted for a new sand wedge, but there's so much information now, like, and a little bit of misinformation, like bounces and grinds and things like that. So I always stress this, and just the general thought of fitting is you don't need to have all the answers. You just have to have the questions for us, because that's what we're here for. So whether you play soft sand or firm sand, or you have flash greens or slow greens, any of these fittings that we do have that in mind. Like, we're here to fix what you are looking for, if we can. I mean, there's a limitation to some of that, but if you didn't know that there was, seven different grinds on a Titleist Vokey wedge, and then you start reading into it, you can get into those rabbit holes pretty quickly and get lost. So that's why I always say, come on in. That's where we'll just talk fitting with you. We don't mind, even if you don't get a fitting. We can talk like you and I are talking, and just say, hey, here's what we'll be looking for, and if it makes sense, then they'll sign up for a fitting. They'll go through the actual fitting process, as opposed to just having a couple of talking points in their head.
so one other thing too. Um, do you fit for grips?
Sure. In the context of anything you go through, like a fitting for wedges or irons or a driver, even the putter, there's grip size, there's grip texture. So the fitting typically for us, the actual air quote, the word fitting of the grip, is primarily just the size. So does he have large hands, long fingers? Does she have arthritis? Anything that would affect how you hold the golf club, right down to your grip pressure. The type of grip, like whether you're using a certain brand or certain texture, is it a wrap grip, is it a cord grip? Those are more personal flavors. That's like kind of picking out your pizza. But if you said, hey, I play in the rain a lot, well, I might favor a corded grip, for example. Or, geez, I got really soft hands and I tend to get blisters. Well, we might go to a softer grip or a wrap grip. But the grip size is something we talk about in every fitting, because it's important, and it's not just always about hand size. So you can go online and measure your finger and say, hey, look, I got, 8.5 inches from the heel of my palm to the tip of my middle finger. But then that guy might hold the club more in his fingers. Or if you're a baseball player, you might hold it more in your palms. The same exact size hand could technically be in two totally different size grips. And we'll talk you through it. Like, even if you came in just to get regripped, we talk to you about it if you want to. And they always say that because some people don't care. They know what they want. But if you're not sure, we'll talk to you about it. It's good.
So do you typically use the same grip from the wedges to the driver?
Most of the time. I'll have a few people that might mix it up a little bit. They might change their wedges a little bit, or possibly their driver. And it has to do with, what they perceive as better touch or different forearm rotation. But typically, yeah, typically you'd have A to Z, all the way through your bag, having that same type of grip and size grip. Putters are a little different because we use those a little differently, but that would
Yeah,
be an opportunity to talk about that one as well.
yeah. So what I think we've done here is we've gone kind of soup to nuts about the generalities of club fitting, and there's been a lot of really good information. You and I are going to dive into more. I mean, we could do product reviews if you want. I don't know if that's something you'd want to do, but
Yeah, we
you
could
know,
definitely do that down the road. This is
yeah,
a kind of an odd time. A lot of the new products will come out in January. I know we've
right.
seen some of the new Shrixon irons already. They're here, I should say. So the fittings of that are good to go. But if there's companies that are bringing stuff out in like January or February, get a chance to hit a few myself even. And,
Right.
I like to compare and contrast. I'm a golfer too. So I like to hit things and compare to what I like and don't like. But that's always a big piece of discussing individual tastes versus overall popularity. And sometimes they don't always cross over. One guy likes a dark colored finish and the other guy likes a matte finish or something. Those are just personal, but we can talk about performances. Absolutely.
That's good. So yeah, this was good. More to come with this type of thing. I really enjoyed the discussion, and I think that the viewers will as well. And if you if you're out there and you're trying to figure out what you want to do, if you want to get a fitting, if you look at this video, you come away with a lot of good information, and I appreciate that, Darren.
Yeah, like I said, just as a general thought, you're everybody can be sized for their golf clubs, a beginner to a scratch golfer. Not everybody needs to be in the most technical situation with a launch monitor, but you should at least ask the questions. You'd ask questions about a car if you're doing that. So the golf clubs are also a big purchase, but there's enough information out there where fitters can just talk about fitting without actually going through the process, enough to give you comfort, to know that you've got enough information for what your level of play is, or as you mentioned earlier too, maybe it is a lesson first and then fitting comes in second. So there's never a right or wrong. Your own personality has to be involved at that. And like I said, we're here to help, and that's our goal, is to keep people playing golf. So it's not about us as much as it should always be about you.
Sounds good. All right. Well, I look forward to our next episode. Again, Club Fit Simplified on YouTube. Let's grow something here. I think it's great. I think it's a really good information for the especially the recreational golfer. And obviously go down to Joe and Lee's and get your equipment because they got everything from soup to nuts down there.
We call it our
Thanks.
big toy store for older people.
Exactly. Thanks a lot, Darren.
My pleasure.
All right,
Thanks.
we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.